Well, hello there. Old Man Kelley here. I thought I'd talk a few minutes on special effects. As you know, if you've ever watched any of my videos here, I study the early days of film. It's sort of my passion. I actually studied film in general is my passion, but I have a special fondness for those early days. And I often think to myself, wouldn't it have been cool to be alive at the turn of the 20th century when there were no rules, when everybody was just free to create whatever they wanted, and anything you did beyond point and shoot was considered genius, you know? George Méliès learned just by stopping the camera, having somebody walk off frame and starting the camera, it would look like that person just disappeared. And he's the father of special effects, and rightfully so. But it was just a simple thing like that he learned that made him this visionary. I could have been that way, or not, right? You could say, well, it could have been so cool. I could have done all these things back then, but would you have been that smart back then, or would you have been like an idiot, like I probably would have been, where I just set up my camera, cranked it, and I got a film. Anyway, so I think my idea of wanting to be alive back then is a bad one, because right now we're at a good point, because in my opinion, we're reaching the end of advancements in special effects. Now, you might say I'm wrong. You might say, Jeff, 20, 30 years from now, you're going to see things in films that'll just blow your mind that you never thought you would see. And things are going to keep advancing. And you might be right about that, but the way I look at it, well, I'm old. You know I'm old, right? I make that painfully obvious. And I grew up, in the 70s and early 80s, and before Star Wars, special effects were horrendous, except for maybe 2001: A Space Odyssey. When there was a special effect on the screen, you knew it was a special effect. There was no question. When Godzilla walked through a city and broke apart buildings, you knew it was a man in a rubber suit with toy little buildings around. There was no question. And the giant Gila monster, you knew it was just a little tiny lizard with toys around. There was no question there. You just dealt with it. Suspension of disbelief wouldn't even compensate for that. It was hard to even... Special effects were... And special effects, by their nature, shouldn't be seen as special effects when the end user watches a movie. You know what I'm saying? If you can tell something's a special effect, then who's ever doing the special effects essentially has failed in his job. But back then there was no choice. They just didn't have the technology or the money to do special effects right. You know what I'm saying? So, but now we've reached a point where it's harder and harder to tell what's a special effect and what isn't. I mean, when Iron Man's flying around, it's a special effect because people can't fly around like that. But just from a visual standpoint, it looks like he's flying around. It looks real. And the filmmakers had done their job. And things are looking so real, so professional, so where it's not taking you out of the movie by cheesy special effects, that for the average film goer, I think we're reaching that point where things just can't get much better. Am I making sense there? I'm sure the techniques, the filmmakers, the computer users, whatever they do in Hollywood, their techniques are going to get better. They're going to get better software, they're going to get better ideas, they're going to get better equipment, whatever. But I'm talking about what we see when we go to the theater. I don't think it can get much better than it is now. I think it's leveling off. And there'll be slight improvements, but it won't be this I mean, if you take from 1977 to the year 2000 and look at how much special effects advanced in that short bit of time, it's amazing. But now the bell curve's starting to, and it'll get slightly less and less and less and less. We're at a great time for filmmaking, because we're seeing, I think, the end of over 150 years of progress. Not the entire end, but it's all coming together now because of the things they can do with computers and whatnot. So, special effects. They're wonderful. They're amazing.